Hi, and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know. This is a podcast about classical works of literature, fiction, classical philosophy, art, maybe music. Why not? And
Why haven't we done music?
We don't have good
idiots.
guardrails on this show. We're
don't.
just whatever we feel like.
It is
putting
whatever.
in.
Yeah.
we don't know it. Maybe we just don't know enough about it.
About music?
Yeah.
I think AJ
Because
could do
clearly we're experts on everything
else.
we do.
Yeah, exactly. I think AJ would do a great music episode.
My
I could do a
name
music episode.
is Graham Donaldson, and I'm joined by my fellow classicists, Thomas Magby.
Hi.
And AJ Hannenberg.
That's me.
Do I count as a classicist? Like
Why
I
not?
don't even work at a classical school anymore.
You did.
You're doing it right now.
You're holding a book. Of
I'm a classical
I don't know if that's
educator.
a classic.
yeah.
How
Your
dare
children
you.
are
How
being
dare you?
Your children are being classically educated.
Is Charlotte Mason classical?
I think she's classical adjacent.
Ooh. Someone at our church described Charlotte Mason as classical light.
Awesome.
That's made me laugh quite a bit.
That's
I don't
great.
feel that way, listener. Sorry, that's just a quote someone said. I thought it was funny. Anyway, Charlotte Mason for them, but homeschooled for ours. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing more classical than
that?
teaching your own kids at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just like the basis of it. Actually, it would be more classical if you sent your kids to the center of town.
Thank you, yes.
With money and said, find
Naturally.
a teacher.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
We send them
To the
Find a
Agora.
tutor. Yeah.
Find a tutor.
go to downtown Austin
in
and just
downtown
with cash
Austin.
money. My
Yeah.
5-year-old is.
There's
And,
some sophist out there.
There's they're gonna
I'll make you a congressman for $20 a week.
they're gonna be in some math.
The
cult
sophists
with,
are the thing I'm most worried about from the situation. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, incredible.
with Pythagoras, and they're gonna worship the number 4 or whatever.
Look, I could
They
see
had
that.
some stuff right. I gotta say, like we're still talking
The
about
number
still
4,
talking
they
about a
got some
theorem,
stuff.
That's
right?
true. Yeah. I mean, you try to draw a triangle.
Yeah, for reals.
We can talk about this book. What are we going to do today? What do you want to do?
You're the guy in charge, man.
are we doing?
We're just
Well,
like-
he's still introing, right?
I'm still injuring. So no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we're here to talk about. Am I breaking? I'm doing this wrong by talking about a recent release. I mean, literally within
Modern
the last
classic.
a modern. Which of you hates that phrase? Maybe both.
Probably I do.
You hate that phrase?
It's probably AJ.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever taken a stand on it before, but I can't say I'm getting good vibes.
Good. No, we're here to talk about the newest book from Mr. Josh Gibbs, A Parley with Youth. So I guess our connection here for it being classical is that he is a classical educator, formerly with Veritas in Virginia. He's recently moved and is starting this classical teaching institute at the Ambrose School, so up in Idaho.
Also a high school, but he's doing it for teachers, right?
Correct, yeah. So the point is to have teachers who would come there, learn from him, and then go back to their schools, as I understand it. And yeah, there you go. So that's Josh Gibbs. We've talked about his books before. I'm sure you all have read his works before. What else on Josh Gibbs is important to know?
It's got a big bushy beard.
Big, bushy beard.
Got a good voice too.
Does.
Great
Also
voice.
very true. Was very
Yep.
good.
Chocolate.
His voice is like chocolate?
Yeah.
Is that? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can see that.
Good. I think he does also teach online classes as well. As like Gibbs
Rustic
Classical.
bread.
He's
Is what his
polarizing.
voice
Some
is like?
people he's polarizing. Some people really don't have a taste for how he talks about things. Whenever we read books of his at our school, there's been some pretty strong delineations between this is wonderful and I can see how this can apply in the classroom to what am I supposed to do with this.
Have you all? So, I mean, we read on being unlucky. His book his book on the consolation.
Yeah.
How to be unlucky. His book on the consolation of philosophy at Veritas when I was working there. Have you all read other Gibbs for professional development?
I've
Yeah.
read Something They Will Not Forget.
Yep. I think
Not
there are
for,
pieces
for,
of that.
not the school hasn't. I've read it.
You read that
Yeah,
just
yeah.
yourself.
I think the school gave us like a chapter from it to read,
Maybe they also gave us the so you're sending your kid to a classical school
pamphlet. Yeah.
which isn't bad.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like
that's
it.
pretty good.
Yeah,
It's
for
Pretty
sure.
good.
So yeah, this is his newest book. So I guess just to say how it's structured. So that again, the name A Parley with Youth, and it is a collection of 13 dialogues. So each of them is a back and forth between a student and Josh Gibbs and the teacher. And
Are these real dialogues or are they?
he talks about this in the intro. They are not real in that it's not recorded word for word, but he would say that they are things he has talked about with students before. Like they are inspired by conversations that have actually happened.
Okay.
You're given a thoughtful look
Well, I'm just trying to rage the screenshots he gave me, so I actually can read them.
I'm very helpful in that I sent a bunch of screenshots of what we'll read later.
Trying to put them together.
So they don't come, so they're not, again, not like a word for word conversation that's recorded. There aren't podcast episodes you can go listen to, but I'm curious about this. He's trying to capture these impactful conversations on important topics with high schoolers. I'm curious, do you all have any conversations like that where you're like, you had a moment of like real breakthrough, had a moment where you kind of addressed some kind of important topic with a student? Like, do you all have anything that comes?
Oh, for sure.
I know you have
absolutely.
You have your class time, but even just kind of the one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, it's often in moments of great crisis. If the kid has done something terrible, or something terrible has happened, or they're dealing with some, I get approached by kids who are going through really difficult times, and so those are often moments of breakthrough.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had them sometimes in class. I've seen small epiphanies, but like the real nitty gritty emotional life stuff for an individual student, that happens in crisis.
Yes, the answer to the other is yes. But it's also, I will have post-talk students coming up and saying things like, you said this offhanded thing in the middle of a lecture that I have thought about forever. And you're like, oh, cool. Awesome. Well, happy to help.
Is there any so AJ, you are saying the commonality is that there's some time of crisis, and then is it because the student is open to hearing things in those moments of crisis?
Yeah, it's a great moment of change, right? So they become vulnerable in that. Either they've made a great mistake that they need to recover for, that they can't escape from, right? Yeah. They are laid bare and you can discuss it directly, or they come because they know they're in trouble and they need help. And so advice rings truer because they know they can't handle it. There's all kinds of things that might contribute to this.
Yeah.
But sometimes they just come in for dating advice. And and sometimes I hope that stuff lands. But
yeah. I'm curious if
That's
there's
fascinating. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a student like that.
Really?
About
Yeah,
dating?
in 12 years.
No dating advice
No,
once?
not really.
I had them 2 or 3 times last year.
Yeah.
Sometimes 4 girls would come in and be like, she's dating this boy and he's a mess. Can you tell her that it's bad? Or like she's leading him on, and I, give a little bit of advice.
No, never happened to me. Maybe I give off a like, don't talk to me vibe.
Maybe you give off a, I'm not going to talk about your piddly dating relationships vibe. That's probably more it.
Because you would tell them to break up, I could see like that just being your advice every single time.
Probably.
Or you'd say, seek Jesus, now get out of my classroom.
Yeah. Is there anything, just in those conversations where you're talking about something, you're helping someone work through something, do you have any kind of like approach or way that you think about those conversations? Is there a tone that you take, or anything that you're trying to accomplish in those conversations? Anything common in your approach to situations where you're helping someone, a high schooler in particular?
Ask a lot of questions, avoid blame, often point out that they know the thing that they should do and just aren't unwilling to do it. Right? They're overcomplicating a simple situation. There are some situations that I will openly admit I'm unequal to, and say I do not know how to solve this for you. Yeah. But often they know the right thing. They just don't want to believe that it is the right thing.
And then do you tell them that right thing? Like it just becomes clear in the conversation.
And I'm saying like, it might be you are leading him on because it feels good, but it's not going to feel good when he feels awful and you've broken his heart. So stop doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Graham, any thoughts?
I mean, I think AJ is right on that. No, I in regards to tone, I mean, like, I don't know.
Well, maybe let me. The reason I ask is that we're going to read one of these chapters, so one of these dialogues in a little bit, and I think you'll see this approach of, in line with, we've covered many of Gibbs's books before. There's kind of a directness to the conversation of a student will raise a concern. The concern often kind of hides what's actually going on, and so Gibbs will be kind of trying to unveil the kind of something deeper, some sin that is probably surfaced through this conversation. And then instead of coddling that, instead of trying to kind of relate, like instead of that kind of bridge building that sometimes you might see, it's really a more direct approach to those conversations and topics. Like, I guess that's what I'm curious. Like, is that something you think about in these conversations?
I am much more of a like conflict avoidance person.
Yep.
Despite how cranky I'm on the podcast, I'm much more of a like conflict avoidant person that I am Like I saw like the thing we're gonna be reading about is a student turning in a paper late.
Yes.
Like I'm much more, maybe to my own detriment, flexible, where to buy the student's story that they tell me about X, Y, and Z happened and I didn't print it. Can I give it to you at lunch? And I'm like, yeah, fine, give it to me at lunch as long as I have it. Like I don't, because I'm like, I don't want to have the conflict. I don't want to turn this into a like character building moment.
Really?
Maybe I should.
Yeah.
But it's mainly because like I just, and this is the bad thing. Sometimes this is like I just don't want to deal with making you better right now. Just like give it to me later, and that's bad. I know.
For me, it's often I don't know how to, and this is something that's difficult and why I have to ask a lot of questions. It's really hard to discern when it's okay. Legitimately, this kid had it. They something went wrong that was out of their control that they could not do. They made every effort to get it on time and they just couldn't. So sure, give it to me. Or this kid is looking for an extra 10 minutes to type it up furiously on their computer and then we'll turn it in as soon as it's done late, right? Like it's hard for me to discern that. So I can ask questions and I often don't have time to discern that. And so I give leeway on some of those things. But
I do too, because in my mind, I can't even fathom typing up an assignment the day that it's due. Yeah. Like I always did everything that was due. I was always done my paper in college like a week before it was due.
Yeah.
And so I can't even fathom that there's a need of a student to have like an extra half hour to finish this thing at lunch, because the very thought of it has like I've never lived that reality. And so like I've never, like in regards to that, like I know Josh Gibbs he talks about like he tried all the tricks when he was a student, so
Yes.
he knows all the tricks.
Yes.
Whereas like I've never tried the tricks because not because I was perfect, but because that was never my personality, was to try to get away with stuff. So I probably,
it just seemed like too much hassle.
people
Just do the
probably
thing.
pull the wool over my eyes all the time
Yep.
as a teacher, because I don't realize what they're doing, because I don't value the thing they're trying to get, the extra half hour of writing time. Because in my mind, it's like that's like you're gonna cheat me out of an extra half an hour because you haven't done this thing. It's like you're probably not going to create a better paper because of this.
You're still going to fail.
You're still going to fail it. So like, okay, fine, give it to me after lunch.
What this would feel like to me as a teacher is trying to force an illegitimate crisis, right? To turn a late paper where the kid had maybe they had practice the night before, they couldn't finish it, they forgot to put it in their bag, or they forgot to print it this morning. I could force this into a crisis moment. But I don't know that usually that seems to me to not ring as true with the kids. Like they feel that it's a forced crisis. They're not ready for a crisis. They don't feel they've done anything wrong. So I can try to make them feel like they've done something wrong, or I can wait for a real crisis,
Yes.
or give them things that will come up in their mind when they are actually in real crisis. So I don't try to force it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, or it's such a big pattern that at the point you say, you actually are honest with the student. You say, I'm gonna hold the line on this one because you haven't been able to do this all semester. So now we're turning this into a thing, as opposed to all of a sudden I'm going to enforce the rules. It's now no. This is now going to be a thing. This is now going to be an issue because you can't seem to get this properly. I'm now gonna treat this with the way that it ought to be done because you no longer get the leeway because you've been abusing it. Like I have definitely said that kind of thing to a student before.
Yeah, like
But not just arbitrarily said, I'm enforcing the rules now. I've actually said, I've been giving you leeway. I'm not giving you leeway. This has to be in, or now you're getting a 0 because it's late, because this happens every time. I've had that conversation for sure.
At that point, it's like it's a habit that you are trying to fix, right? Whereas I could turn a single instance into a crisis, but I don't think the kid would be receptive. They're often not, and they just feel scolded.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I think there's something, I just find this refreshing in Gibbs' writing of like this directness, this like clarity of thought, this this vision of truth, and like wanting to identify that and call people to that. And in the example we'll go through, there's no backstory, right? We don't have this context of whether this is the third time that this incident has happened, if this is the first time, if this is early in the school year, if this is April right before the end of the school year. So there's kind of a filling in that will happen there. But yeah, in Gibbs' own words in the introduction, when when I reflected on my youth, some of the most important conversations I had with adults were brief, particular, and pointed. And then he gives a few examples from there. So it's not the conversation that makes you feel better or kind of accommodates whatever is difficult in his life. I guess with the important caveat that it's him doing something wrong is how it's when he was doing something wrong, having an adult directly tell him, hey, do better, is what helped him.
There is a conversation that I have with a certain kind of student whenever they come across, and it's usually the student that is very witty and very funny and feels out the line of what's appropriate and inappropriate and is willing to make a fool of, or is willing to be a little inappropriate in class. I will often, after a day where the student hasn't been doing this, I will often pull that student and say, like, hey, listen, you're funny. You're clever. You're a funny kid. You're a clever kid. You need to learn when you do that, and you need to learn when not to do that. Because that you have a power. Like, that clever funniness is a really good thing to have in life, but it's going to blow up in your face if you don't learn where that line is.
Yep.
I've had that multiple times with students, conversations. And I've had students come back to me years later and say, like, I needed to hear that. And, yeah, so I can tell you who they were after when we're not recording.
I've had that same conversation with a kid. It wasn't the same, but I'm just trying to think of pointed times when I've sat a kid down and sort of forced a crisis. There was one where a kid insulted me twice during the day. Like, he said that, I think he implied that I was stupid and then said my hair was greasy. It probably was. Yeah. Anyway, I held him after and I said, you insulted me twice today. He's like, no. And I was like, no, you did. You insulted me. It's okay. I'm 30. I think I was like 34 at the time. I said, I can handle the insults of a ninth grader. This isn't going to ruin my day. But I am afraid that what you are trying to do is make friends of those who are around you. You're funny. You're trying to get some social clout. But here's the thing. They will always wonder when that is going to be turned on them, right? If your funniness is insulting people and making yourself seem better than them, I'm worried that you will eventually find yourself alone because no one wants to spend time with that person. That is my concern.
Or the only friends you'll have are the people who don't want to be insulted by you, so they cozy up to you.
Exactly.
And those are not good friends.
Or other people whose only comedic bone is to insult.
Yeah.
And I was like, you will find yourself alone.
Yeah.
And that is the outcome of this course of action.
Yeah.
You got to sort that out. Like, you make friends by being kind, not by making fun of other people. And I sent him off, and I saw a marked change.
Yeah. So those sorts, So you can force those sorts of crisis moments. Maybe the takeaway as we talk about this is I find for the crisis moments, having them be in compliance to, like, the standards of turning in papers and their uniform, only so helpful versus, like, these sort of softer interactions that AJ and I are talking about, like making fun of kids or the kind of conversations in class. I don't know what I think about
I think that's true. I think when I try to force the issue because, like, you're being disobedient about your uniform, they feel scolded enough about that already. But if I talk about something that wasn't across the line, that's just something I notice in their behavior, it's usually better received. But
maybe we should be more. We should use the uniform as the crucible of virtue.
But that's the thing is I don't know that the uniform is a virtue thing. Like, maybe
obedience is.
You think
obedience is sure.
Yeah.
But
because aren't most uniform violations, people know what they should do and they don't do it.
Yes, but also kids forget or they're tall and their shirts come untucked. Like, that's always the risk is it could be circumstantial. It could just be a kid being a knucklehead.
Boy uniform violations are because they don't realize it because they're doofuses and they're boys, and boys don't really, like, know their
They were
bodies.
running outside. And
Girl uniform violations they are doing it because of the perception that they want to give off because of their uniform. That's a gross overgeneralization, but 9 times out of 10, a boy just, like, forgets his belt because he, like, doesn't remember that he has a waist. And a girl gets a uniform violation because she's rolling her skirt because she wants to have a shorter skirt. Or she is wanting to wear a piece of jewelry that's out of uniform because it's pretty and she wants to wear it, right? Like, so, like, oftentimes just high school boys are just not very oblivious to, it's not, I guess maybe as they get older they want a cooler haircut or they want to, like, but most of the time, like, the boy uniform violations they're just.
You forgot your shoes because you had football this morning, and so you put Crocs in your bag. So now you're wearing Crocs.
And now they're wearing Crocs, and they're just like, I'm just gonna take. They're just like, I can't handle life. And they're just like, they just are oblivious. And
what's the discipline system now? It's not marks anymore.
It's lunch detention.
That's all. Just any uniform violation is lunch detention.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to get a little leeway on shirt tucks, but I've seen so many kids abuse that and they get told by every teacher once a day, tuck in your shirt, and they never do, and then the next day they get the same thing. So I told all my freshmen this year, and I'm gonna tell my seniors too. I don't give leeway. If I see you with an untucked shirt, it's a lunch detention. But if they catch me with one, I'll do 40 push-ups.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Has that happened yet?
No.
Okay.
But I gave in one day, I gave 3 freshmen tuck violations.
Yeah.
Lunch detention.
So so those are different kinds of things. So one of them is like executive functioning skills just happen later in boys, and uniform is like
or never in boys.
Or never. And the uniforms are just like a petri dish for executive functioning skills, to show that they don't have them. And then often for girls, it's that social awareness, and they want to have the posturing of what they want to, how they want to look.
But I guess it just seems like there's a distinction then of there are these kind of rules that are supposed to be followed that are kind of amoral almost, right? They're just things that need to be done. Again, there used to be this metaphor of like breaking those rules, you get the equivalent of a speeding ticket, right? And you just get the consequence and you move on from it. As opposed to like high schoolers are also experiencing great growth over 9th through 12th grade of like moral formation. I guess you see those as kind of separate things, right? Like the thing that is growing the person, that is preparing them for adulthood and maturity, is kind of separate from the work
compliance
of
to
compliance to these rules or compliance to whatever you set in your classroom.
Maybe we shouldn't see them as.
I'm just asking if
separate,
that's.
But I mean,
yeah. Okay. Okay. And like that's just that's what I'm hearing from what y'all are saying, and that's why I'll be curious what you think about this example as we go into it.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah. So I've already mentioned Parley with Youth, 13 different dialogues between Josh Gibbs and a student on different topics. If you're thinking about topics that you'd want to correct in high schoolers or things that you see that are just off, that if you could correct this you would, are there any topics that come to mind? Like what are things that you see and notice as being off in general for
how loud they are?
You truly are a curmudgeon. That's incredible.
They're very loud.
I mean, my office used to be right next to AJ's, and he'd have to tell me to quiet down, like, I think every day. So, yeah. So
I miss your boistrous laughter.
Yeah,
I really do.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So
what the question is, what things do I see and want to fix?
Like it's really the question of like, you're going to write a book like this. What are the kind of typical conversations you have? You mentioned dating. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had some dating ones. What for me, a big one is the competitive destructive instinct.
Oh.
In high school, they pick at each other.
Yeah.
Right? Make someone else look stupid, make yourself look better.
Yeah.
In a way, at least in junior high, that's a way that they learn socialization, to be told that they smell bad, right? They might actually smell bad and they need to fix that. So getting told sometimes helps. But in high school, they just are horrible to each other. And at some point, they need to learn that when you get to college, doing that is going to lose you friends. Like that little piece, he's cool, he can make fun of everybody, goes away almost instantly when you hit college. No one cares about that anymore. You're not impressing anybody. They will not hang out with you. Yeah. So like real kindness, like consideration of others, not trying to make yourself look better by making other people, putting them down. That was just, I had a class last year that was doing that. It was hard to see.
You mean the people I have now?
Have you noticed it yet?
Not really, no.
They might grow out of it.
The thing is, that's the other thing is like, you get such, AJ always says these things and then like, I get them and there's a summer of change, It's amazing the growth that happens in 4 years. Like I can't think of the only growth that I've had in 4 years is I've gotten fatter, and the growth that's happened in like a high school from 9th to 12th is
it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
I often get groups that the people are like, they're horrible. Oh, it's the worst group I've ever had, and they come to my class. And they're great. They're great little people. It feels like that's happening this year. I got warnings, and I'm just like, these kids are fun.
That's awesome.
I have no problems here. They're not mean to each other. They're just kind of have too much energy, which is not weird in 9th grade.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, so just the series of topics. He has one on friendship and family, kind of this over importance that he sees in high schoolers.
The friends are more important than family.
Friends are more important than family, which he will. I think it's the longest of the dialogues. Is that one? He has one on video games and how that's like a habit to turn away from. As
they love music.
Kind of in the same vein. Yeah, there. Being a chapter on disagreeing with your church. This kind of people who are kind of picking and choosing individual theological positions instead of learning to submit to or be a part of a collective, be a part of a church.
Very funny considering
him. Is that
grow up Baptist, become Eastern Orthodox?
But he switched churches as opposed to in this dialogue. It's someone who's like, I think they go to a Baptist church and become convinced of infant baptism. And so it's like, I'm going to go to my church, but hold this one view that's like different from everyone else.
Oh, so they should go to a different church.
And that either that or for as long as you're like in your household, commit to the church that your parents are a part of.
Gotcha.
Kind of listen to that teaching. A conversation about someone who wants to to leave private school and go to public school because of like how it's going to challenge this person's faith and help them grow in their faith. So yeah, a number of different conversations. They're all great. I'm going to go for one of these shorter ones just so we can read it here. This one is titled On Loopholes. So you all just have a bunch of screenshots, which hopefully you'll be able to read from. And
Got
if
'em.
not,
Ready
I
to
have
rock.
my copy here. I feel like Gibbs has to be Graham. And
No,
then,
why?
the kind of rambunctious.
Oh, I thought I would be Marcus.
Yeah, the rambunctious
Yeah.
student is absolutely AJ.
Do I have
So-
to do the voice?
Although Donaldson does a pretty good high school derp kid voice.
I mean, I could be convinced either way. Do you want to be bushy beard Gibbs? Like, is that
Yeah, let me
Okay,
be Gibbs.
cool. Awesome.
Graham, be the kid. Is that
So
all
the
right?
kid's name is
Sure.
Marcus.
I'll be Marcus.
His name is Marcus, and then the teacher's name is Gibbs.
Okay.
And we'll probably stop throughout this and talk about it.
You
So,
pause this when you need to, bees.
happy to.
All
Let's
right.
go for it.
All right, so we're starting it off?
Go for it.
So I'm the student.
Dialogue 12 on loopholes.
Why'd you count my paper late?
It's incredible. I'm so excited.
told you it was good.
I'm so happy.
Pretty good. The paper was due on Friday, and you turned it in on Monday.
Well, I wasn't in class on Friday.
You weren't in my class on Friday, which was the first class of the day. However, you came to school later in the day.
How do you know that?
I saw you around school.
But I wasn't at school during first period, which is when your class meets, so I wasn't present to turn in my paper.
Did you have a paper to turn in on Friday?
Hold on. No.
Which is why you didn't bring me the paper on Friday when you arrived late.
But if I wasn't in your class to turn it in, why is it marked late?
Because you skipped my class Friday morning just so you wouldn't have you would have a plausible sounding excuse for turning it in Monday.
That seems like a legitimate reason to me. Why are you calling it a plausible sounding excuse?
Skipping class to get a few extra days to work on an assignment is not the kind of plan you would present to a teacher prior to the fact, is it?
No. But so what?
Why would you not present that plan to a teacher prior to the fact?
Teacher might not like it.
Why?
Because teachers have to say, I want you in class, even when it's not true.
That's true.
Let's pause there. So just to start on the setup for this, is this something that you've experienced before? Someone who skips your class because they have a deadline, they're actually at school later in the day. Thesis had this.
Probably.
Probably.
Thesis happens out.
Yeah.
Kids skip for thesis a lot, but they didn't skip my class. They skipped everybody else's class.
To work on thesis.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you would have kids. You would have those instances where like something was due and you see the kid later in the day.
Yeah.
But at that point, like, there's either there's excused absences and unexcused absences. So if like the kid had called in and was like, I have a doctor's appointment or whatever, and mom signs off on it, like, okay, nothing I can do about it. If a kid is skipping class is like a bigger penalty than just
Turning
them
a
getting
paper
the
late.
paper marked late.
Because
Yeah.
can't you not, for an unexcused absence, you can't make up the work.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly.
So an unexcused
so they can't
absence,
just skip.
So
So
they
let's
can't just
say-
skip. An unexcused absence here is like they are not turning in that paper at all.
Yeah.
And they're getting a 0 on it. Doesn't matter how late it is.
And this is later in the dialogue, but this is a situation where the parent is actually on board.
Yeah.
The parent has agreed to their absence.
Okay.
Gibbs will question their reasoning. They're like, the reasoning for
Gotcha.
it.
All right.
But let's say, parents pick when doctor's appointments are scheduled and they happen to pick when this deadline was. Kid shows up to school later in the day and doesn't give you your assignment.
Yeah.
If that's an excused absence, you think there's no,
I wouldn't do anything about it because we're a parent partnership school. At that point, I'm going to trust the parent that they
I
knew
am.
what they were doing for their kid. If it's a repeated thing, I might reach out to the parent and say, hey, what's going on here? But 99.9% of the time, I consider myself subordinate to a real parent. So if they want to let their kid sign their name on a form, sure. If they want to let their kid skip because they've put in a doctor's order that's false, that's not a fight I want to fight where I'm fighting both the parent and the kid. I'm
wouldn't-
not going to win that.
you wouldn't call the parent about that?
No.
Okay.
Partially because they're the one that lives with that kid. They're the one that knows the struggles. I don't. I see them max 3 hours a week. So maybe that kid has some sort of horrible depression, just lost their dog. Who knows? I don't know what's going on. So at that point, I would defer to the parent.
Okay. Graham, would you?
Same thing. Oh yeah, I defer to if the parent if the kid has gotten to the point where they're helping they need the parent to help them collude in order to miss my class to get an assignment done, like that seems like a bigger need. Like that seems like something that was needed. Like if you're going to go to mom and dad to get them to be like,
you side with the student at that point of they actually did need to skip class and get extra time on your assignment.
I guess. I mean, if they're bringing it up to they're getting mom and dad to or getting mom to book the doctor's appointment on this.
There's probably something going on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a test, I mean, they need to take they have to take the test outside of class time on their own. That sucks. So I don't know. I again, it's like,
I think we're giving a little, so we might be adding a more, maybe too fair to the student. Again, there's more, maybe we should read further.
Sure.
Yeah,
because there's both, my first question is kind of off the bat, is this something you would respond to or push back on? The answer is no as of right now. So we'll see if that changes as we go. So
yeah, unless this was like a repeated pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, a one-time thing, I wouldn't worry about it.
In the moment that just occurred, the student says, teachers have to say, I want you in class, even when it's not true. Gibbs agrees. That's true, which will be something the student will come back to. So like teachers have to be polite to their students is what the point being
So is it
made
my
here.
turn?
Yes. So
That's true, but is that the only reason?
Whoa. Did you just admit that teachers have to say that even when it isn't true?
Yes. Are there any other reasons the teacher might not want students skipping class to get extra time on an assignment?
I don't know. I'm still too blown away that you admitted teachers have to say, I want you in class when it's not true.
Are basic good manners really so mind-blowing?
How is it good manners to say, I want you in class even when it's not true? That's not good manners. It's a lie.
If a certain student hates class and does not veil his contempt for class, but actively tries to derail lectures, mocks the comments of fellow students, and insults the teacher after class, it is hardly surprising a teacher would breathe a sigh of relief when that student was out of class. At the same time, teachers are a good bit like judges, police officers, or priests, in that they are custodians of public trust. Because such profound responsibility rests on teachers, they are not free to do and say whatever they like, but must submerge certain personal opinions they hold beneath the high calling of their public persona. When a teacher says, I want you in class, he is speaking from his public persona. It is no more a lie than an officer's badge or a judge's robes.
That sounds
I am not in agreement with that.
I was going to ask, what do you
I'm
think?
in total agreement with that.
Can you say more?
Whoa, all right. Disagreement? Let's get into it, Graham.
Thank you. Finally. Yeah.
The idea that the teacher holds a public persona and that their own personal views on certain things, totally.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, I don't care. When it comes to the rules of the school, I've come to the point where it's like, I don't care if the rules are right or wrong. If it's a school that, if they've asked me to do the rule, I'm going to do it. I definitely think that like a teacher has to uphold a persona of society that and that in many ways their own personal beliefs about like a student or whatever doesn't play into it. Yeah, totally.
I'm in agreement with that, but we'll turn my car around when it gets close to a lie. So yes,
You would not tell. So if you have a student who's actively disruptive, you would not tell them that you want them in class.
Well, the truth is, I do want them in class. I don't enjoy having them in class,
Sure.
but do I want them to be there to improve, to grow, to change?
Yeah,
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I say I want you in class, that is a truth.
Yeah.
If I don't want you in class,
Yeah.
I will say you are not allowed to come to this class until you prove to me that you can be here.
Yep.
I would actually take position. So as
If
far
someone
as
says, Mr. Donaldson, do you enjoy having me in class? And I don't, I'm not going to lie. But if they say, I agree with
I would
like,
mild it down. I would say sometimes it is difficult because you decide to derail the class.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, or I would often say, I don't enjoy when you do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to I don't enjoy you, I don't enjoy this certain behavior that you do.
Yes, that. And as far as having public persona, yeah, I will. My public opinion about some school policy is that I will uphold the school policy. And if a kid asks, how do you feel about this rule? I will say, it is the
matter.
school policy.
Yeah.
We are going to follow it.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is my job. And typically I agree. And so I'll even be like, look, I'll help explain it to you. It's probably a good policy. So where I can, I add personal opinion if it helps. If I cannot, I keep that opinion to myself. My kids don't know what political party I am. They don't know where I stand on certain complex theological issues. But as far as lying goes, I will never, that is a line I don't cross, right? I believe I can uphold that public persona that is paramount without resorting to a lie. I don't agree with this paragraph.
Okay. You would mean the I want you in class in a different way then
I
Then they're talking
enjoy
about-
having you in
Yeah.
class.
yeah.
No, I mean, the truth is I do want them in class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't, they drive me crazy, but I want them there.
Yeah. But you would also, have you told a student before that like them being in class is worse for your,
Yeah.
okay.
Because at that point, that's a thing that they need to hear.
Yeah.
If they make my life miserable for everyone, I'm not going to tell them I have a blast when they're in there. I will say sometimes it's hard. You talk a lot during class. That's difficult. But I do want you here because I believe in you and I want you to grow, is what I would tell the kid.
All right, let's keep going. Marcus, that sounds like an excuse for telling
That
lies.
sounds like an excuse for telling a lie.
Does to me too. Given how little respect you have for the public persona of the student, that's not surprising.
I don't believe in the public persona of the students.
Of course, very few people do, which is why we no longer dress up for church, why we conduct wedding services wherever we like, why you don't call me sir, why I don't call my boss sir, why dinner guests no longer wait for the lady of the house to take the first bite of her meal before beginning themselves. We've been taught to believe that the level of mess, entropy, and informality, which comes naturally, is honest and therefore virtuous, although none of it has made the world a nicer place to live. You would enjoy class more if you believed in the public persona, though. Your classmates would respect you more as well.
How do you know my classmates don't respect me?
It was your classmates who told me you were skipping my class on Friday morning as an excuse for turning your peeper in on Monday.
Again, how is this an excuse? Why isn't it a legitimate reason?
As a strategy for getting a few extra days to work on the assignment, there's an appearance of legality to what you did. But that's not the kind of thing you can be proud of, not the kind of thing you could do openly. Rather, it's the kind of thing you were hoping would not be discovered, the kind of thing you know you cannot get away with twice. In other words, it's a loophole.
I'm not ashamed of what I did.
That is somewhat true. You told your classmates about it, but not me. Not me?
But not me.
But not me.
Yeah.
Your goal was to look smarter than me, to shame me, and to insult the diligence of your classmates who got their papers turned in on time.
What if my goal is just to get a few extra days to work on the assignment?
You would have not told your classmates about it.
What if I told my classmates just so they could see how much I cared about doing a good job?
At this point in the school year, I have no reason to believe that's true. Oh,
That's
ouch.
pretty, yeah.
You can't prove that.
And you can't prove your righteous motives either.
Okay, so just to pause there. So there is a little more going on than just the person has skipped and
Yeah.
this conversation is happening. There's also this kind of like bragging, right? The student has then bragged to other classmates.
Sure.
And then those students have come to the teacher and said, hey, this is what happened. Does that change anything of how you would view the situation?
Yes, sure.
Yep.
Would you approach it differently if
Yeah.
you have testimony of, like, if students are coming forward to say, this person's bragging about it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you say more about what you would do?
You want to feel this one or should I?
You go for
hopefully
it, I need to
both,
think.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. First thing I would do is run it up the chain, check with the higher ups and say, hey, I got a kid who's doing this. This is the kind of action I'm thinking about taking. What do you think? I would also check in with the kid. If he told his friends that he was going to do this, this is one of those things where it's I can ask, pull the Socrates, ask questions. He knows he's being foolish. This little thing flips to lecturing pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think mine would be more questions. Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why did you think that was okay? And let them sort of discover it on their own. Often that's, to me, has been more effective for me. But eventually there would be something like what this is, which is saying, this is what's going on in your heart right now. You wanted to make me look silly. This is the kind of thing that I would feel would be a good crisis for a kid to go through.
You would push this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He bragged. I found out. And now he has to stand on top of that action. And I don't think he can. And so that's the kind of thing that would be a good growing moment.
Okay.
Sure.
You want to say anything?
yeah, I
Greg?
mean, something comparable to that. I would also ask lots of questions. I would probably, if they were bragging that they were getting extra time to do the assignment, and I would point out, hopefully the assignment was like finished and graded by then, and hopefully I can point out that like you did not even spend your extra time to do better on this assignment.
Yeah, because in this case, it's already happened that the assignment was marked late,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this might be the Monday after, and the student is coming, or it could be after that.
So the thing is like, yeah.
This isn't the day of the skipping, in
Yeah.
case that matters.
Yes, this is after the fact.
Yep.
Bragging, I don't think I've ever had students come up to me and say,
So and so
sort of open-heartedly, someone has been bragging about that they can pull one over on you because they don't like. Yeah, I've just.
I have.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened. Maybe I'm just naive, but I've never had a student come and tell me this sort of thing. I've had students, sort of. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a student come and.
For me, it's not always classwork. I was leading a Europe trip once, and I had one kid come up and say, "Hey, this particular other student has been stealing from every town they've been in,
I've
and they've
heard
been
about
bragging
that.
about it."
Yeah.
So I had to confront that kid.
Yeah.
So I've had that happen.
Yeah.
Good.
Stealing from every town. Jeez Louise.
Terrible.
Yep.
Okay, then let's get back to it. Marcus, I don't have to, though.
So Gibbs just said you can't prove your righteous motives.
Correct. So, yeah, Marcus might have just wanted these extra few days. The problem being, then why did you talk about it? Right.
Hold on. Where are those legitimate reasons?
bottom of
Somewhat true. You can't
215.
prove that.
Bottom of
You can't prove your righteous motives either. Is that where we're
Yeah.
at?
Yes, so Marcus will go, I don't have to.
I don't have to, though. The whole argument concerns a matter of the heart, a matter of conscience. You don't know for certain what's in my heart, which means you don't have to believe me when
Which means you have to.
Oh, sorry, which means you have to believe me when I say I had the best of intentions in skipping your class on Friday.
Fascinating. Please go on.
Marcus, Christians have
Christians have to take people at their word. Give to the one who asks you, as Jesus says.
Well, we've reached a place in this conversation where I might say something like this. So do you have to give me everything I ask of you as well? And I might try to get you to reason from your own inane premise and gradually defeat your argument. But I've taught a few loophole artists before, and I'm simply not up for debating you. Now, not even you believe what you're saying, which means that no amount of logic in the world is actually going to shut you down. Suffice it to say, there are enough verses in the Bible about grace, mercy, charity, forgiveness, and good intentions to keep a small-minded man condemning the world for the rest of his life.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means my obligation here is now, my obligation is here and now to be useful to you, to do you some good. And debating you any further on the Christian philosophy of conscience wouldn't help you at all. It would make you twice as dangerous to yourself as you already are. There are times when taking a man seriously means not taking his argument seriously. This is one of those times.
So, you're simply not going to give me an answer.
The world is a difficult place to live. Most people live with a staggering number of regrets, secrets, and fears of getting caught or found out. For this reason, real confidence is a genuinely rare thing. It is so rare, in fact, that one rarely finds two people with real confidence in the same room at the same time. Confidence can be used to help others. However, it can also be used to exploit others. Of course, people not only live with regrets and secrets. In our day and age, they also live in a state of perpetual distraction and with a standing list of 50 things they need to do, only 20 of which they can remember at any given time. They forget deadlines. They don't read closely. In such an environment, loopholes proliferate.
So just to pause. So you could imagine this turning into a 30-page back and forth of trying to dismantle the argument,
Right.
and Gibbs' approach here is to just sidestep the whole thing
Yeah.
and say, you're not arguing from honest terms.
Yes, I agree with that.
Totally
and
agree
that
with that.
totally
Yep.
is you do not get into a when the student is clearly not themselves coming at if they earnestly and honestly were confused, then sure. But when they are like giving you a Bible verse about giving you mercy, what about mercy? Like they're not. Yes, Gibbs is spot on when he says there's enough verses in the Bible about mercy and justice to give a loophole artist everything he needs in order to be confident that what he's doing is fine. Yeah, totally agree with that.
And the nothing I say is going to help you.
And nothing I say is going to
We
help.
could do this till I'm blue in the
Yeah.
face, and you wouldn't come any nearer to actually believing the right
Yes.
thing.
Do you see people take that approach, like teachers or parents, or
I do.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
that they just ignore, essentially shut down the argument
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say,
This is
not
we're
gonna
not
deal
we're
with
not
this.
arguing about this is not a
You don't actually believe this.
this isn't a logical premise. Yes, you don't actually believe this.
Yeah. And also, in my experience, ninth graders aren't the best at even finding loopholes. So I'm like, look, your argument isn't even good. So I'm not even, what you want to do is get away with this thing. So yeah, I aim at the motives.
do they agree to that? Like, will they kind of give up the facade?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
Because they're not going because they're not really they're hoping that some sort of appeal to a limp-wristed Bible verse is going to kind of get them through it.
Right.
And when you sort of dismiss it, they're not going to double down on it because they're not going to win if they double down. That's not the thing they were hoping to survive off of.
Yeah, the moment you sort of sidestep and say, I know exactly what you're doing, it sort of loses
And you
its
say
power a little bit.
you don't even believe this. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to take your argument about charity seriously.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. Let's keep it going then. So then we're going to get to Marcus. What exactly do you think a loophole is?
So what exactly do you think a loophole is?
A loophole is simply a confident person using the ambiguity of the English language to exploit a person who lacks confidence. Most people spend their days in the company of people who they trust, like family members, friends, coworkers, peers, fellow parishioners. In other words, people will not try to trick them. Under such conditions, it is easy to forget just how ambiguous many words, phrases, and symbols actually are. When we live with others, we come to define words the same way, interpret phrases the same way, read symbols the same way. All of this happens organically, accidentally, and invisibly, because so much of what happens in a certain community is never formally codified and explained. It is easy to surprise others by suddenly taking advantage of how much the community assumes about itself. That surprise is a loophole. Loopholes are never part of a long game, though. They only work on short terms.
Why is that?
Because people who look for loopholes can't be trusted. You can only burn someone with a loophole once or twice. Then they give up on you.
Isn't it your responsibility to close off loopholes? Doesn't the existence of loopholes prove that you haven't articulated the rules clearly enough?
No. Wherever you find words, you find loopholes. Loopholes merely prove that anything can be cut in half, including a sentence. Some loopholes are bigger than others, but no law code written by human beings can account for every contingency, every possibility, every technicality. Language works because of shared definitions, shared experiences, and a shared desire to understand them. As someone who talks for a living, I'm keenly aware of the fact that just about anything can be misunderstood and misinterpreted, willfully or unwillfully. It is the nature of language to limit and to truncate. Given the expansive nature of human ego, language will always be potentially, plausibly, and arguably offensive. Speaking is always undertaken as an act of faith, which assumes the goodwill of the one listening, but such goodwill can always be exploited.
Do you buy this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as strong as yes. I buy it where he says that yes, we're never going to tie off every single loophole.
Yep.
And people can willfully play loopholes, and I think it's actually quite good to point out to a student that it's like you can get away with things and loopholes every now and then, but you'll just become someone that nobody trusts. Mm-hmm. And so
no one takes seriously.
Or no one takes seriously. So my line is always like, you might get away with it, but you never get away with getting away with it, which is probably even a line that I stole from Gibbs.
Probably from him, yeah.
But there's a certain truth to that. And at some point, like, integrity of character is revealed. And so with the phrase that maybe is a little convicting to me is when he says loopholes are the things that people can get away with other people who lack confidence.
Well, exactly.
Because I think there's always part of me that's like, I just don't want to get into the conflict with this.
Right.
And I'm willing to accept the paper that's turned in at lunchtime because they haven't printed it before class because it's a 5-minute passing period day and they don't have time and they got here late. Like all those compounding excuses. Like I'm, So maybe that's I don't know.
But what are things where you hold the line? Like you must have things you care about that.
There are things that I care about for sure.
I hit a kid on, what was it?
You hit a kid?
I hit this situation with a kid.
I heard I hit a kid also.
Yeah,
I did say I hit a kid.
Pretty rough. That's
Print it.
Yeah.
Take it out of context.
We're literally recording
I don't
this
hold the line
conversation.
on that one. AJ can hit all the kids.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
this occurred.
A kid was in the senior room and he had his shoes off and was putting his feet all over everything. And I went and I said, "Put your dogs away. Kennel those pups."
Yep.
And he said, "What? Is it in the rules?" And I was like, "You are out of uniform.
Yep.
It's not. You are not wearing the appropriate shoes. Put your feet on.
Yeah.
Or put your
feet on.
Put your feet on."
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm tired.
You're doing it.
Anyway, like he tried to pull a loophole.
Yeah.
And the
Just shut
kids
it
were
down.
even asking. I was like, "We don't have that. You have to wear a shirt in the uniform, but you have to be wearing a shirt." And one kid was like, "What if I unbutton it really far?" Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just Thursday this happened.
Yeah.
I guess yes, the lines that I hold are those lines of that kind of like manners and decorum and when someone's starting to do what about if I like open my shirt real low, like when they're you don't want to play that game of like parsing out what the rule
The point
is.
where the line.
Oh,
is
I just said
crossed.
go
The line
bananas.
is,
It's like it seems fine to me.
That's it, yeah. Or like all of it's a violation. Like all of it's wrong. Yeah.
But I mean, just the way you talk to others. I guess some of the things that I really like, that I don't abide is people giving up on intellectually hard things. Like I don't know.
That's more a disappointment, though, right?
Yeah.
Like that they could push themselves and
Yeah.
achieve that. All right, then let's keep it moving.
All right, so where are we?
I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything technically prohibited.
Is this really how you want the student-teacher relationship to work? Buyer beware, watch your back, should have checked the fine print.
It's not unfair.
And when you someday marry, do you intend on being technically faithful to your wife? If you asked your wife if she had been faithful to you, would you be comforted if she answered technically yes?
You tend to liken everything to marriage.
When you marry, you'll make a number of promises and vows to your wife. Do you want to be the kind of man who seeks loopholes for those promises? Do you want your wife to seek loopholes in the legal obligations she has to you? Do you want to be the kind of father who looks for loopholes in your legal obligations to your daughter?
Why would I do that, though?
For the same reason you skipped class Friday morning, to get something you wanted, which couldn't be acquired openly and honestly. Looking for loopholes becomes a kind of sick logic, which drives men to loneliness, self-justification, and the cultivation of secret lives, which they find more pleasurable than their roles as fathers and husbands.
All that just for skipping class on Friday? Doesn't that seem like an overreaction?
Where do you think unhappy adults come from? You don't think miserable adults come from nowhere, do you? It takes a long time to make a truly miserable adult. You've got to start young. Of course, that also means you've got a long time to prevent adults from becoming miserable, which is what I am trying to do. When I look at someone like you, I have to ask myself what you'll be like in 10 years from now if you have the same warped sense of justice, the same lack of self-awareness, but more time, money, trust, and power on your hands.
So what do you think? Who has the better of the argument right now? The Marcus on the this is an overreaction, Gibbs to the this leads to a path of a miserable life.
I mean, Gibbs is right in saying that, you know, any sort of he's right in saying that if you continue to do this, you will be the kind of person who does this, and the kind of person who does this is going to end up unhappy for you. And again, this is where like you need to understand the student that you're talking to. Like any teacher can have 6 students off the top of their head that they're like, yeah, that person, if they keep going on this path, is going to be miserable. And then 6 students off the top of their head, they're like, well, if that student like asked their parents to skip class so they can have extra paper, like I'm fine with that because I know who that student is on a regular basis, and they're not that kind of kid.
Yeah.
Which may sound really unfair, but I mean, like, just like in the rest of life, people build up goodwill, or they build up, or they are untrustworthy. And so, and I don't think, but it's just true. There are students that when they have done something, they must have a better reason. They must have a good reason for it. And there are students that are just like trying to get away with everything all the time. Is that unfair to say,
No.
AJ?
Mm-mm. Yeah, there's students who are always trying to get away with stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then there does come to be at some point where you have to say things like, if you keep going this way, like that line of like, you don't want somebody to say, do you love me? Technically, yes. Or are you faithful to me? Well, technically. Or what do you mean by faithful?
Yeah.
Like, because like, yeah. So then at that point it is that heart thing. Yeah. So Gibbs is right in that, I think.
I agree.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You don't see this as an overreaction or kind of coming down too hard on this?
Well, this far into the conversation, the kid's clearly being a twerp.
Yeah.
And so telling the kid, look, you keep doing
kids
this.
like dug in their heels, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
they haven't like come clean and been like, you're right. I shouldn't have done it. I'm so sorry. Please.
And most of the kids, when you sort of catch them in that
Yeah.
business, like catch them in you're not arguing on honest terms, that would be the turning point.
Yeah.
But this kid has dug their heels so far in that
Yeah.
at this point, this would be you keep going this way, you keep not listening to anybody and doing this stuff, you're going to end up in a bad place.
Yeah.
You kind of want, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Like, you want to say to a kid, if you have legitimate reasons why you would need extra, like, come talk to me.
Yeah.
But that does take up a lot of time, because you need to make sure that you make the right decision when the student comes talk to you and say, is it like, are they in this position because they're on like stupidity and laziness? At that point, you kind of need to hold the line.
Yeah.
But if they legitimately like are, need the extra time and you can give it to them, then you do it. But you can't. But if you have that as your policy, then all of a sudden you have 40 kids coming to talk to you. Well, actually, that's not true, because you have most of the kids are just like,
Most kids just do it.
most kids just do it.
Yeah, you hope you have enough trust with the students that if they're in trouble, they come talk to you. That's usually
What
I
I
hear in
tend to
school.
say is try not to just have it be like an isolated incident. I will say things like, for this assignment, it sounds like you need the extra time and you've gotten yourself into a place where you're coming to me and asking for extra time. You have to get your stuff together for your next assignment,
Right.
because life's gonna this keeps coming
Right.
until we graduate in May. I teach seniors. Like, this is gonna keep coming, and like you can't just limp through everything. Like at some point, I will, like, you have to say like, pull it together, man. If you're falling apart,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good. Okay. Let's get toward the end of this. We're almost there.
Yep.
So 220 starts at the top with Marcus. Look, can't you just...
Look, can't you just let me go with a warning? Can't you just like tell me not to skip class on Fridays again? Why does my paper have to be marked late?
If a late grade on a late paper seems too high a price to pay for such a lesson, I doubt a warning will really sing the message home.
What do you get out of grading my work lower?
Nothing. Less than nothing. The fact your parents approved your plan of skipping class on Friday morning means they'll want to schedule a meeting with me after they see your late grade. They'll offer the same excuses and accusations you did. I'll have to explain myself again. It'll cost me an hour of my time, if not more. I will lose sleep about it as well, because with each passing year, I get a little closer to telling people like your parents the unvarnished truth about the kind of person they're raising you to be, although I've not quite crossed that threshold yet. In other words, it would be easier now to let you off the hook, but it would be harder in the long run.
How would it be harder in the long run?
If I let you off the hook, you'll tell all your classmates your plan worked, which would breed contempt in their hearts not only for me but for the school. That sort of contempt would prompt them to look for loopholes as well. But if I call you out on your foolishness, the students you brag to about your plan will see that loopholes don't work. They won't come to class skeptical of the lessons I teach, discouraged by the fact that their bumbling, full-witted teacher was outwitted by a student. They won't think of their teachers as people they must outwit, all of which means they are more respectful in class and more receptive to what I teach them. Besides, if I call you out on your sin, I win a little more respect from you as well.
Why should I respect you more for all of this?
Ask me that question again in 10 years.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Mic drop?
that's a good.
Come on.
I mean, it's a
That's
good
pretty
ending.
Yeah.
There is something to that, and maybe this is, and maybe there is the leeway that we have for these kinds of things does breed a discontent for the school. The thing is, it's like hard to know what the student body thinks about you, and it's hard to know if they like think of you as an idiot that you can pull a fast one over. And there's also like I don't want to go find out.
Right.
I tend to be hard-nosed about most of this stuff and hold the rules. Like, stuff is due at the beginning of class. You have to use a grace pass if you left it in your locker, or a late pass. You have to use a late pass if you have to print it after class. Like, I just hold the line. But when a student comes and they're clearly distraught and they need more time and they don't have a late work, like, I'm receptive to that. They know that beyond those rules, I care for them. I'll ask them how they are. I'll ask them about their hobbies. I get to know them. That is sort of where I find that purchase. So I think he's right. The more you let those lines be squiggly, either you just have to be consistent, right? You can't be hitting it sometimes, hitting it not. I think it's okay to be like turn it in as long as it's due on the day. Whenever it comes in is fine. As long as they know what to expect, that's okay, right? Then they're not really pushing your rules. They're just sort of going with what they expect. The moment a kid turns it in a week late when it's due that day, that's a problem. I don't know. I tend to be pretty hard-nosed on most of this stuff until a student comes to me and actually asks something.
Yeah,
Sure.
but he's right in saying that like there's a world of difference between the student who does it sort of privately because they need the extra time to get the thing done, and the student that's like brags about it to everybody else. As soon as it's bragged about to everybody else, like I'm,
Game
any
over.
teacher is out of all charity because that is a threat to
The order of...
the the world.
Yeah, sure.
And you can just revoke their late work passes and say you have forfeited those.
Yeah.
You've abused the right. That's your punishment. You can't be late on anything else.
Is that true? And like the late passes are given by the teacher? Like it's not...
So as far as I know, in our school, and I could be corrected on this, they give a lot of leeway for sensible, logical consequences. And if a kid was bragging about turning in late work and not having to use a late pass, if I went and ran it up the chain and said, I want to take away the rest of the late passes,
They would probably...
I would get an
support
A-OK.
that.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've had some weird punishments in class before get approved.
Yeah.
So
Because it was like specific to whatever that student did.
yeah, I had one kid in a leadership class that could not behave appropriately, and I said, I'm not going to allow them back into class until they prove that they want to be here. If they don't want to be here, I don't want them here. And so that kid wasn't in class for like 3 weeks, but we figured it out.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. All right, we got to the end of On Loopholes. I just reading this, it's I think often of Graham's quote of coming to Veritas and realizing that if he was going to be in this position for a long time, he would need to learn to love the students. And what each of these conversations in the book is oriented to is a love of the student. It's like they want it comes very much from a place of wanting these students to live good lives. happy lives. I want to be careful in the use of happy, but like lives that are satisfying. And there's probably an uncharitable way of reading even what we just went through and
Sure.
thinking it's like, oh, why is this teacher coming down so hard on the student? But where it comes from is there is some kind of underlying sin that needs to be dealt with either now or later. And if it's dealt with now, it's much easier than building a life on top of it and then having to deal with it
But
after.
the hard part is like, all right, we have a high school of 250 kids roughly. I have half of those because I teach 10th and 12th. So I've got,
125.
120 kids, whatever it is.
Yep.
Because it's not exactly 250.
It's about 200, right?
Can I actually love 120 kids with that level of like getting into it with the badness? Part of me. So I think the answer is no. No, you can't.
Maybe.
But how? So then, is it fair to pick and choose the ones that you really get into? I mean, every teacher, like students say, do you have our students say, do you have a favorite student? And the answer is probably like, yeah, probably I do. There's ones that I enjoy being around more than others.
And they're not always the ones that get good grades either.
And they're not even the ones that get good grades, but there are ones that for whom their personalities, like, I enjoy being around, and then there's ones where you don't. But you all want them to, like, know truth, goodness, and beauty, and to be able to, like, grow to become competent people who are members of their church, who love their spouse. Like, you want the things that are truly good for everybody. But then how do you sort of square that with, like, you can't pour into everybody to a level of really being involved in their life. The way I think about it is like, which kid's extracurricular activity do you decide to go to? Right? Like, which student, when they ask you, hey, will you come to the play? Hey, you will come to the soccer game? You know that those things are really meaningful. Which student do you say, I'm going to go watch that kid play soccer versus, or I'm going to go watch that kid when they're on their night at the play? Like, which kid do you say, I'm going to be more of in their life than others? I don't know the answer. That one I find very difficult. I find that hard.
So hanging out, like going to watch things, if kids ask, I'll try to go. And the ones that I'm legitimately friends with, I'll go watch. Because there are some kids you just sort of become friendly with. As far as how to effectively love
I don't
individual
think so.
kids.
I don't think there are friends I become friendly with.
Maybe. I get a little bit more because I do climb with some of them. Sure. So maybe not friends, but like I become more I develop more of a relationship with that kid.
Yeah.
Right? So friends is maybe the wrong term because it's never an equal friendship until they graduate.
Sure. Right. And even then it feels silly.
Even then it's a little bit weird for a while. But as far as how to love effectively, I really do look for those kids who they just seem more receptive. Like they're a little bit more in crisis or heading towards crisis, or they have something wrong, or like those kids, they are the ones that my love will be most effective with. There are some kids who just have their stuff together.
Right.
They're nailing it every day. They seem fine. They're honest and open. Like they don't need my attentions as much. Mm-hmm. And so, yep, I become friendly with them or, develop a relationship with them. That's fine. I'll go to their stuff. But the kids that really are headed towards crisis, those are the ones where me interacting with them on a daily, coming in and say, hey, how was your weekend? How is this specific thing going for you? That's where it's most effective, is those kids who are like heading towards crisis.
Yeah. And there's probably a question of what the pouring into means, because this conversation is you give someone a consequence, they come to you and ask why, you explain it to them, and then that could be the end of the conversation.
No, because like he says, then there's going to be an hour
There's
meeting.
emails
There's
for
going to
sure.
be the agonizing that you have that night at dinner when you're at home, and all of a sudden, like, the problem of this kid is like in your living room, in your mind, and your wife's like talking to you, and you're not paying attention because you're thinking about the meeting that you're going to have tomorrow. Like, you can't do that with every kid.
Mm-hmm. Sure, but
So who do you pick?
So you are saying you still do that, but you're picking who that's for.
Yeah, how do you pick which ones that you care? Like, how do you pick the ones that you care about? Just not that you don't care about. You know what I mean? Like, how do you pick the ones that you're gonna do those extra things, these kinds of conversations, these kinds of like, I'm trying to save you from your future self. How do you make those decisions?
Sure.
I'll pick the kids that need growth or are ready for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are kids so entrenched in their badness that my efforts won't help at this point. But
I feel like kids who are in crisis, I don't know how. There's nothing I can do to help them. The ones that I feel like I can help with are the ones that like don't realize the intellectual horsepower that they actually do have, and give them some more encouragement, and give them like other things to read, and give them other things, and like say, so I don't know.
Interesting.
Well, we'll probably continue this in the in-between then to talk more about that.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
Yep. Parley with Youth, newest book. It's great. Check it out.
Check it out. All right, did you open it?
No, you did it.
You opened it.
Oh, I did it. This has been classical stuff you should know.
Incredible.
We're professionals. We're professionals.
We've been doing this for
If you want us
years.
to pour into your lives as teachers, you can email us at the guys.
No.
I was kidding.
No.
If you want to talk to us, you can email us if you have questions. You can patronize us on Patreon, wherein we have monthly AMAs.
Where some of our subscribers do some patronizing.
Where we do some patronizing, where we there's a chat, there's a lively chat that happens,
Which
where
we
you
really enjoy.
Make fun of my shoes.
It's so fun.
You wore bad shoes.
I didn't wear bad shoes.
Okay. They were fine shoes.
I looked fly.
They were probably more appropriate shoes than my shoes.
No.
I don't think so. You did look good. You've been looking good.
Thanks, buddy.
And we are on Twitter. I mean,
X.
technically we're on Twitter. Yeah. We technically engage with you on Twitter. There's a loophole. But anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.